Hi, it's Abby, and this week I'm going to be sculpting on top of a 15.5 ounce pasta sauce jar, and I'm going to be making a fairy house. I'm going to start this video out by stressing you out with my pore scraping techniques. I quit recording so that I could do this more safely. I got all the paper off. It doesn't matter if the sticky stuff's there. If anything, it just helps the clay adhere to the jar a little bit better. And I just cover the entire thing with clay, with a big sheet of clay that I rolled out with the pasta maker on the thickest setting. And I just make it a seamless piece right here, and I just use scraps to fill in the little bits. The top of the jar had like a lip on it where it goes in, and I wanted it to be more seamless in the log shape. I didn't want it to have a big dip in it, so I'm just filling that in with some more clay. I made a texturizing tool. I didn't want to get my clay dirty, my jar dirty, so I took a scrap piece of clay and I went outside and rolled it around on a tree and baked it, and it gave me some pretty good texture. It's a little bit different just because an actual tree is so much bigger, so it doesn't exactly translate in the size of it, so I just kind of go over it and add a bunch of texture. Here I'm making some circle windows. I feel like they are like the epitome of fairy houses. Everything's circles for some reason. After it's attached, I blend it in with the jar and just kind of make it, not a blob of clay. I want to make this look, well, kind of seamless. Since this is supposed to be a log, the top of it is supposed to be the exposed inside of the tree with all the rings and years that the tree's been alive. I also am going to make the front door a log ground, so I attach another snake of clay and adhere it just to make like a doorway. And before I texturize the inside of it for the log ground. I felt like it needed a stepping stone, so I'm making a couple rocks underneath the front door, and I'm using a piece of aluminum foil for texture. And then here I am going in and making those rings for the door. For all the eaves on the doors and windows, I'm making shelf mushrooms. I don't remember the exact species that I'm trying to imitate here, but it's one of my favorites to use for, I guess, shelf mushrooms, because there's a lot of variations. I just like the brown one. For the largest shelf mushroom, I'm using cosplay because since it sticks out so far, I don't want it to snap off. I thought about using cosplay for all of them, but I decided against it, and but this is they put foam in the clay the way that it's formulated, and so it bakes or it bends after it's baked. I go in and I make a whole bunch of shelf mushrooms on the side of my log, just because that's how they grow. They grow in bunches. Ivy is one of my favorite plants, and it's one of my favorite things to put on fairy houses, so I'm attaching a snake of clay for the vines, and I just kind of do this all over the back of it and coming up to the front. I use some scrap clay and I cut out little ivy leaves. They're not perfect. I go in and I reshape them a little bit with some sculpting tools. But in the end, they kind of honestly look more like marijuana leaves than they do ivy leaves, but I tried. It's really just the fact that it's like a 2D thing, and ivy leaves kind of stick up more. Here I made a little like pot or planter type thing attached to the side of the house. I want to put a big fern here. Every little house needs a chimney, so here I am attaching a chimney off the side. I wrapped a little bit of tin foil and clay just to bulk it up and not waste clay, and I attach it to the side, and then I build it up a little bit more with more clay. I just want it to be on there sturdy and kind of make it like stylized. I like that rickety, like that doesn't look like it was made by a professional type thing. Here I'm going in and I'm making individual stones on the fireplace, and I also do this for the windows and the doorway because I want them all to be stone. I go back in with my texturizing tool before I bake it, just to re-texturize where I've smushed it down. And here we are. I bake it in the oven at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour. And after it's done and cooled down, I use acrylic paints to paint it. I'm using a brown base coat all over the log. And I think I did like 2 or 3 coats of that. After the brown base coat, I go in with a darker brown wash and I dab it off with a paper towel so that it's just in the recesses and you can see the texture more. After that's all dry, I go back in with a lighter brown and I just dry brush it over the, I guess, raised areas. And I use the same brown to start on my shelf mushrooms. I basically just use all of the same browns, varying shades, to create dimension and make all of these mushrooms because they just have rings of varying brown colors. I wanted to give the rounds like that light brown fleshy inside, so I go in with very light brown base coat for the lid and the front door. Here I add some light brown to the mushrooms. I want you to be able to see the rings, so I go back in with dark brown again, and I trace the rings that I've sculpted into the rounds. I do a really dark center because that's what it naturally looks like, and I try and use all my colors in stages so that it doesn't dry up. So I go back in and I add some of this dark brown to my mushrooms. I do a base coat of sap green for the ivy. I just go all over the vines and leaves. I dry brushed a little bit of brown added to the sap green just to add some dimension and highlight the textures on the plants. I go in with a very light green and I add veins to the leaves. I paint all of the stone parts light gray, and then I go back in and I paint over it with watered down black wash. After the initial gray and the wash are dry, I go back in with a lighter shade of gray and I dry brush the raised areas. At some point I painted the pot that kind of terracotta brown, and here I go in and I paint and glaze the windows, and I go in with some Mod Podge, and I am going on different varying types of moss. Also off camera, I attached that fern that I was said I wanted to add there, which is also fake foliage. I try and add in moss wherever it would naturally collect moisture, like on, the bottom of this windowsill here, and on top of rocks, and on the side of a terracotta pot. And she's done. It's time for some glamour shots. I'm pretty happy with my little fairy house. This is the largest fairy house that I've made. I usually make little ones out of baby food jars, and this is the first log fairy house that I've made. I usually make like mushroom fairy houses. I'm happy with it. Thank you for watching me sculpt today. I appreciate your support. If you want to watch me sculpt some more, subscribe, and I will be making some more art soon.